Tom, where are you taking us today?
I'm taking you to the northernmost satellite station, where we have around a little bit more than 100 tracking antennas, tracking polar orbit satellites. So this is the place where everything happens. You have to like sign on to the road and off the road every time you go on it, so that people are monitoring this road. Bommen på tur opp, 3 fax.
So which antenna is this one?
This is SG-24. Which is doing the European Space Agency's weather monitoring satellites. Come on in.
Yeah. This is a luxurious one, as Tom told us.
Yeah, this is our visitors one. So I had kindergarten here earlier this summer. We had lunch here. That was really nice. Told the kids about satellites.
Nice. And what other type of visitors do you guys have?
We have ambassadors coming here. We've had the king and queen here, and yeah, some presidents, but also big customers. So now we're getting to watch the antenna setting up for the next contact.
I feel like I'm in an Austin Powers movie.
Isn't it like shoot off a beam?
Well, like a mix of James Bond and Mission Impossible feeling to this place.
So it just goes around and finding a signal?
It points towards where we have predicted the satellite to come, but it also unfolds because it has cables, so to avoid cable wrap it kind of needs to turn a little extra. It resets pointing upwards to take stress off the gears, so that's where the position
so that it doesn't keep winding itself up
yeah.
and up and up.
Yeah. So they've had scientists here trying to determine if this could be harmful to us, and they say that it's not harmful to humans, but don't like be right in front of the antenna too much. So
what's the purpose behind, why can it be completely open? Why does it have to be protected inside of a building?
this needs to be protected inside of the radon because we have like 20-30 knots of snowstorms, and that could be like around 0 degrees, so you'd have buildup of ice, which is impractical. We have some buildup of ice on the outside of the radomes, snow and ice, so we have a rope to get that off, which is a lot of work, but much easier than to excavate the antenna. It's a lot of maintenance. There's a room in that square part on top there, you can see the ladder, and that's where we have to apply grease for the gears. So I think the antennas started moving now. On the horizon it moves quite slow, and then it catches the signal from the satellite. There are...
Let's see. I want to see an... Oh, you can totally see.
It's moving a little bit now.
Yeah. Oh, it is. Yeah, slowly.
This one is coming from somewhere above Russia, maybe, and then moving that way across the pole. The benefit of having the ground station up here is that we're really far north, so we can see all the passes. So the Earth rotates and the satellite keeps going around and around, but we can see all the rotations. If you have an antenna somewhere in Europe, you can only see like 2 or 3 revs per day, but we can see 14.
Yeah, because you're literally on top of the world.
Yeah, having this position is key to having the world's largest ground station, which this is.
Yeah, I've never expected that it would be this complex of a system.
Yeah, OneWeb is also doing it the same way. They're expanding in India. They're going commercial this year in the northern hemisphere, so UK and the polar regions around the North Pole. But next step is Africa, Asia.
So whenever they have a launch, are you guys communicating with them directly, like through radio, just to tell them the coordinates and everything as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
We report directly what offsets we find and when we are in touch with which satellites. So
Yeah.
that's in the beginning it was stressful, but we have a great team and we're getting really good at it. So it's been more play and fun. The business of KSAT is that we build these antennas, multi-mission antennas, and we can have several different customers running their equipment connected to this antenna, and we can talk with any satellites. So they buy antenna time.
So technically, Starlink
Yeah.
is also part of, like, let's say when Starlink is available for mobile vessels like a sailboat.
Yeah.
Would the signal that we get would come through here first as well?
The signal, if you buy Internet of a global satellite constellation, would be transmitted from your sailboat to the satellite, down to a ground station, and then onto a fiber cable. It could be here, but it could also be other places in the world. But if you're in the northern regions, it would definitely be going through here. We have, for OneWeb, we have 12 more of those antennas over in Inuvik in Canada.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And
Makes
there's,
sense.
yeah, we have a huge ground station in Inuvik as well. And we also have some antennas in Alaska. We have antennas everywhere.
But not south because
Yeah.
access?
Yeah, we have on South Pole as well.
Interesting. Very
Gotcha. So this is just
Australia.
one of the many stations that
We
KSAT
started
has.
out in Tromsø in the 60s, and then we built this place in the 90s. It's been outgrowing anywhere else because it's available and we have a fiber cable, so we have a backbone internet that can support us growing into tremendous. Yeah.
How many antennas do you guys have here?
Yeah, we have a bit more than 100 tracking antennas. The biggest business is here because if a customer wants to establish satellite communication in one place, which is where you start, it should be here because here you can get every time the satellite goes around.
This is how you clean the ice off and the snow. What a shit job.
Yeah.
Come out here in your parka and your gloves and...
I was wondering what this was for.
If you've been sitting in the office for too long, it's not that bad. But there are techniques of doing this because the rope is heavy. Eventually you'll have snow coming down in your head. So you have to like
It's not
keep
quite
moving
like
away.
It's not quite like the Inuit drum, but it's...
But you can, with some technique like fly fishing-ish, you can get the rope to keep moving around. Wanna try?
I think I'd be pretty good at this job.
It takes some practice, but it's fun.
And so, like, how much snow builds up on these things?
It could be
kinda cool. It's a nice drum beat.
half a meter.
Wow.
Most of the snow that builds up on this
And these are all Kevlar? All of them, or just smaller ones? Or
Yeah.
So it's super tough.
Kevlar and then silicone, aluminum rails.
And then
silicone.
the fiberglass doesn't degrade the signal?
No.
Because on our boat, like, we put a cell phone inside, and there
Yeah.
goes our cell phone signal.
Yeah, but you
or Wi-Fi
probably
too.
Fiberglass can have different structures. So,
That's probably
yeah.
true. That one's designed not to block signals.
Yeah, and
That's pretty cool.
And they don't use. I don't think they use epoxy. They use something else.
Kiki, you want jump rope?
But it's fun with
This is arm day, I think.
If you have to do-
all the way to the top.
Yeah, it is attached on the center point of the top.
Tired?
Move it back.
So that's what the cleat was for.
I still think we should have brought a golf ball. Just did like a zoom into the golf ball and then like pretend that it's a satellite and then whack. See like a really close-up shot so you can't tell the difference.
What did you say that this place looked like?
It looks like it's a bunch of giants teeing up, you know, and you're gonna knock some golf balls out into the ocean.
Giants Open.
Yeah, exactly. Driving range. Let's see if we can get all the way out to that boat.
Yeah,
And they're humming.
they're humming. We'd have several antennas working at the same time. They work for about 12 minutes. And there's one starting here twice a minute around here. So
And so these are all the satellites going pole to pole,
yeah,
and the Earth spins underneath them.
yeah.
And so they're like mapping weather, surveying.
These are picking up internet.
These are internet.
Others are monitoring weather changes. It could be taking images of rainforests, deforestation. It could be picking up oil spills from boats. And we are able to pick up the tiniest oil spill would change the surface structure of the sea, so we can pick it up.
And you're not, those satellites aren't picking it up with like visual, they're picking up with like radio, like some sort of infrared radio frequency.
Synthetic aperture radar.
Yeah.
That they use. We can monitor ice sheets. We can have vessel detection.
Is Iridium here? Like when we're on our boat and we're downloading weather off our Iridium Go, is that going up to a satellite, getting downloaded here?
Yes.
Get sent somewhere where they're also tracking the weather from a different satellite, crunching that data and sending it back to us on our boat?
Yes. So
that's so cool.
You're ping-ponging space a lot when you're out on a sailboat.
Yeah. And we're sending our tracking data through there.
The next 2 or 3 years, I think you'll have global satellite coverage, like high-speed internet.
Kind of excited and terrified for that.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to upload.
I think we humans just have to learn to have routines to put away our phones and our internet, or else we'll be connected all the time. It's going to happen in a couple of years. Another thing that is interesting when you're sailing is we pick up emergency beacon signals.
To our EPIRB, if we ever, heaven forbid, pull that.
Yeah, so if anyone in the northern regions pull off their emergency beacon, that will start transmitting an ID, and that ID will be picked up by satellites, and those satellites will send it back here and will then communicate that to rescue centers.
And that's one of those satellites that the closest one picks it up, and then as it passes over a base station, it sends that signal down, rescue station.
Those satellites are actually mid-Earth orbit satellites, so they're at up to 30,000 kilometers. So they can see a huge area at the same time, but they're also able to see a ground station for
and they're just
as long.
uploading and downloading a tiny little bit of data, because it's just one little, like a GPS coordinate and a ID.
That's correct.
Nothing. Yeah. That's one of the reasons we carry an inReach as well. Like when we're out hiking, because then you can be like, I broke my leg, like I can spend the night, but please pick me up with a helicopter in the morning. Or as opposed to an EPIRB, you just ping, you're like.
Yeah, I also use those inReaches because most of the time it's like, well, I don't want to be rescued. But could I have a friend, please? So the interesting part about this whole satellite station is when we pulled in and we were sailing past, we could kind of recognize that they're satellite domes because they're kind of recognizable. But we had no idea that that was part of Svalbard. Like we knew about the polar bears and the glaciers and the tourism. We knew about maybe that's the last 20 years. And before that it was coal mining. Before that it was like fur trading. And before that it was whaling. But is now this like the largest industry here? Like is this why Longyearbyen still exists? It is a large industry, but I wouldn't say it's the largest industry.
Tourism is still larger.
Yeah, the tourism is why we want to continue to stay here. But of course, keeping this satellite station alive is
it's not something that we've ever seen information on or people talk about. We've seen people talk about the seed vault and the coal mines and the polar bears, but like this is huge and it's noticeable, and I didn't even know it existed, so that's pretty cool. What a cool spot though. On a day like today when it's no wind and it's sunny and it's warm and
fairly good view on a good day from my office chair. It's hard to watch the computer screen. Just have to take a peek out the window.
Hello. I didn't hear the camera go and pan over. I don't think anybody's home. No public access, so that means us. So behind me is a door, and it's a door into the Svalbard seed vault, which all these mountains are constantly frozen in permafrost. And so what the Norwegians decided to do was dig a tunnel and build basically a little mine inside of this mountain that's constantly below freezing, and put backup reserves of the world's seeds in there. And it's basically a giant freezer that holds different samples of all the different types of seeds from all the different countries that want to send their seeds here. It's sort of like an off-site backup of a genetic food database. It's a pretty neat idea, and I remember studying this building in architecture school 10 years ago, and I don't remember a ton about it, but it's a pretty cool spot to actually be up here that many years later and actually see it in person, because yeah, it actually exists. It's kind of an underwhelming door, but we can't go inside. They don't do tours anymore, but there's plenty of really good YouTube videos out there of people who've been able to go inside in the past. So if you want to see what the inside of this looks like, maybe we'll leave a link to those in the description. Yeah, it's just kind of cool to be in front of it and see it, and on our way back to the boat.
What's the issue with it today?
Well, we've been told that when it was built, they sort of dug down, and then it's been flooding in the past, and so they've had to figure out ways to pump and build drainage into it. But I think everything is good now. I've also heard issues about, since everything's getting warmer, the permafrost is melting, and it's not as cold inside as they were hoping it was going to be, but that's all somewhat hearsay. But it's kind of a cool idea to have like this giant freezer of all the different corns and grains and all the food crops. There's seeds of it all in there from tons of different countries all around the world.
Do you think Canada has seeds in there?
Of course Canada has seeds in there. All the good seeds. All our moose and reindeer seeds.
Moose and reindeer seeds?
Moose and reindeer seeds. So we can grow new moose crops.
Oh my goodness.
It's cool to be here. I wish I remembered more about it from when I studied it in school, but it's a neat idea, and yeah, maybe someday it will actually be useful. If some country gets their genetic crops wiped out, they'll be able to come and withdraw their seeds from the vault and be able to replant and reseed, you know, an entire grain crop or an entire fruit, or I don't even know what all's in there, but it's a pretty neat idea.